Evening, everybody. Yeah, I'm an obstetrician. Yes, I'm a gynecologist, but I'm not one of the cool kids. So we're going to kind of get through that. But thank you very much for all being here today, this morning at the first service. And I got to tell you, I love it when I see a morning service and an evening service that are full. To have a choir and have an orchestra at both is a unique experience. Les and I get to travel to lots of different congregations across the country, and this is an absolute blessing for us to worship with you today. Um, this is the clip that I was talking about this morning. It's one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite clips.
The shepherd must tend his flock, and at times fight off the wolves.
Have a pastor with the boldness who will fight off the wolves, who will stand up. Men, I invite you to fulfill the role of being a man, to be a defender and a protector. We teach that at the Bible study we attend on Friday mornings at 6:15 in the morning, right over at the Drowsy Poet, which is next to Pensacola Christian Academy, which is next to Pensacola Christian College, which is pretty close to Pensacola Theologic Seminary from what I've learned tonight. This is a beautiful church, and it has gone through an evolution and ministry changes. This is the birth of the ministry of Pro-Life Doc. If you don't know this, this is a practice that was right over on Bayou Boulevard, kind of across the street from Target. This was my first practice it was in 1999 that we took over this practice. At the time, it was the largest provider of abortions in the whole Florida panhandle, and thousands of babies lost their lives up there on the second floor. And it was on a Sunday after church, just like today. After the service, I went over there, and for the first time ever, I went upstairs. I took a tour of the upstairs, and as I came up around the corner, I saw the abortion machine, the exam table, all the instruments ready to perform more abortions on Monday. And I just thought, how has this been going on for so many years and decades? How many thousands of moms have walked up that same set of stairs that I just walked up with, spent 20 minutes up there, and then walked down the same set of stairs without that baby on the inside? So we did a presentation at my church at the time, and then that has evolved into Les and I will probably speak at 40 different events outside of the state of Florida this year. So it is now our ministry. This is my calling. I love what I do as far as obstetrics and gynecology. And it's the only time when people are happy to go to the hospital. Nobody's happy and go, I get my knee scoped next Tuesday. No. But everybody has joy and happiness when they go in to have a baby. So it's my thrill. But this is not happiness. This is not joy. This was the last remaining abortion clinic that was here in Pensacola before it shut down when we invoked the Heartbeat Amendment. That was back in May 1st. But American Family Planning is now petitioning. They're going through the process of getting licensed again because they're anticipating that Amendment 4 will pass and that they'll be back in business. When they were last in business, they could perform an abortion up to 15 weeks gestation, which is horrible. Yet if Amendment 4 passes, they will be able to perform an abortion at any gestational age right there behind Hobby Lobby, which is almost a church, to be right behind Hobby Lobby. But that's American Family Planning. It has an evil feel when you go there. Just like when I went upstairs to the practice, you can almost feel a coldness. It's like if you visit in Eastern Europe and you visited the concentration camps, there is a palpable evil. Well, there is a palpable evil in an abortion clinic where the image of God is being killed on a regular basis. This is Amendment 4, and we're going to spend some time giving you some training on how you can engage in this fight. One of the ways, that's one of the most common questions I've had so far today, is what can we do? How do we get involved? Well, number one, social media. You have a podcast which you can spread to your friends. You can also communicate the tools that we're going to give you tonight. We have lots of information that's free. College students, there's free stuff, all right? And, but also, men, come on Friday. And I would also encourage you, and I know your pastor, and I think he's going to want to join in with other pastors as we approach the election on November 5th. There are a lot of churches who are saying that Sunday we're going to do like Jesus did. Before Jesus faced the trauma of the cross, what did he do? He bowed in prayer. He was there in the garden and he bowed in prayer. That is our most effective tool. I'm going to give you a lot of medical tools. I'm going to give you scientific tools, and we're going to give you a lot of legal tools. But we serve the Almighty God that created everything, who's in charge of everything, and we have the power of prayer. So we need to be coming together in effectual, fervent prayer and praying for a defeat of Amendment 4. But this is what Amendment 4 says. Does it say this is an amendment that will allow for abortion at any gestational age for any reason? No, it's much more deceptive. It says this is an amendment to limit government interference with abortion. Does that describe what it really means? No, not at all. And this is the amendment itself. The amendment says no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability, which is typically around 23 or 24 weeks. That's the way they are marketing it in South Florida. They're saying it just is going to allow for abortion up to viability, except for a huge two-letter word that follows, which is or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the healthcare provider. Health. Health was defined, and we're going to go through this word by word. Health was defined by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1973 in a case called Doe versus Bolton. Health was defined as physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and age. Too young, too old. Mom doesn't want you to have the baby. Dad doesn't want you to have the baby. You're anxious. You have depression. It is so broad as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. The Department of Health regulates doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, physicians, assistants. It regulates all the way down to tattoo artists. So this will, without a doubt, if it becomes a constitutional amendment, it would allow for abortion at any gestational age for any reason. We have babies over at Sacred Heart that are surviving at 23 weeks gestation. We are going to go over the procedures that we are doing to save these babies' lives because they are my patients. We treat them as patients and we save their lives even before they can survive on the outside. And a patient always has rights. So tonight, NorthStone Baptist Church has a new area of ministry. We didn't discuss this with your pastor or with the deacons, but tonight we're going to introduce you, and you've all been accepted to the NorthStone Baptist Church School of Medicine. We're all in medical school, and so we're going to pretend like we are in medical school, and we're going to teach you the same principles that I was taught when I started medical school. And you think, well, can you just go to medical school? No, it was, for me to do what I'm doing now, it was 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, a year of internship, and 4 years of residency. And then I looked at my wife and she goes, no, 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 you're going to get a job. So after 13 years, it was time to get a job. So we're going to take you to medical school and we're going to teach you a little bit of Latin. And seminarians, hopefully you've learned a little bit of Latin, you've learned a little bit of Greek, you've learned a little bit of Hebrew. So we're going to learn 3 Latin words today. The first is primum. Say it with me. Primum. Primum. All right, what's the next word? Non. So primum, non. What's the next word? Nocere. Say them all 3 together. Primum, non, nocere. Did you just tell me you love me? No, you just said, first, do no harm. When you enter into medical school, we are told, we're going to give you scalpels, we're going to give you needles, we're going to give you robots, we're going to give you chemotherapy, antibiotics. Your job and your duty is to heal. First, do no harm. The second rule that we all learn is that patients have rights. Our job is to explain risks, benefits, indications, and alternatives, but patients have rights. Anybody here ever been a patient? If you've been a patient ever in your life, raise your hand. Okay, we've got a lot of patients here. Aren't you glad that there are rights which protect you as a patient? Sure. Even in liberal states like New York, they have patients' bills of rights. New York has 22 different specific rights that are afforded to all patients. And here's always something important to remember. Our rights, when we read through the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, our rights come from God. All of our rights come from God. It's the duty of good government to protect those God-given rights. But even with the liberal state of New York, what are some of the rights that are given to all patients? You will not be discriminated against based on your race, your color, your religion, your sex, or your age. We're going to give you a clean, safe environment. We're even going to give you a non-smoking environment. Patients have rights. You have all been a patient. I've been a patient, and we're going to describe and teach you how we treat the babies in the womb as patients. And if they are a patient, they are a person. If they have persons, then they have protection. I was at the University of Florida, College of Medicine. That's my alma mater for my residency. And yes, they won yesterday against, was it Sanford? I mean, I hope they won, my goodness. But University of Florida College of Medicine, we're meeting with the students and we're going over patients' rights. And we asked the students, I said, if I have a patient in my emergency room that needs a blood transfusion, and if they don't receive a blood transfusion, they are going to die. Do I have to give them a blood transfusion? And the student's like, well, yeah, that's why you're here at medical school. They need a blood transfusion. They deserve a blood transfusion. I agree with you. I said, what if the patient that is in the emergency room who needs a blood transfusion, or they will die down there in the emergency room, what if they weren't born in the United States? I mean, do I still need to give them a blood transfusion? I mean, they weren't born here in the United States. And the students were very indignant. I said, one student stood up and he goes, Dr. Lyle, we've been taught here that a patient is a person, is entitled to respect and bodily integrity, and it doesn't matter if that patient was born in the United States. What matters is that you need to treat them and meet their needs and give them that life-saving blood transfusion. I said, I agree with you. I was taught the same thing when I was here at the University of Florida College of Medicine. And just so you know, the patient that was down in the emergency room that needed a blood transfusion or they were going to die, the patient received the life-saving blood transfusion that they needed, even though they weren't born in the United States yet. And that is the key. We are now giving life-saving blood transfusions to babies in the womb as early as 18 weeks gestation, right at Sacred Heart Hospital. If you were to donate blood at One Blood or have a blood drive here, we can take your own negative blood. We can guide a needle through the skin, go right up to the umbilical vein, and give that baby a life-saving blood transfusion. Well, not only is that a good thing to do, this morning we talked about the great commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and your neighbor as yourself. If you had a matching blood type with your next door neighbor and they needed a unit of your blood, you would gladly give them a unit of your blood because you are treating your neighbor as yourself. This is fulfilling the greatest commandment that Jesus said. We love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and soul. And when you give a blood transfusion to a baby in the womb, you are treating your neighbor as yourself. The preborn are my patients and they are your neighbors, and that's why we are here to defend them tonight. It's called a pubs. It's a Baptist church. How many of y'all like pubs? Good, no hands went up. I was watching the Pensacola Christian College students, but it's not that kind of pubs. This is what's called a peri-umbilical blood sampling, where we can take a life-saving blood transfusion and give it to a baby in the womb. Well, why would a teeny tiny pre-viable little baby in the womb need a blood transfusion? Because from the moment of conception, the baby and the mom are genetically unique. The baby is genetically unique from the mom, genetically unique from the dad, genetically unique from the other 8 billion people on the planet. I mean, and I'm old-fashioned. Half the time, they're genetically unique because it's a little boy that's there on the inside. And then the other times, it's a little girl. But when they are genetically unique, they can even have different blood types because the mom's blood is circulating and the baby's blood is circulating. Everything the baby needs comes from the placenta. Everything the baby needs to get rid of goes from the placenta to the mom. So when they have different blood types, sometimes the moms will develop antibodies which can cross the placenta and start to attack the baby's blood. Mom doesn't mean to attack and harm her baby, but the antibodies are attacking the baby's blood. When we see this on ultrasound and when we test for this, we can actually have two choices. We can deliver the baby to get out of that environment, but what do you do if the baby is only 18 weeks and the best NICU in the world is never going to save the life of an 18-week-old baby on the outside? We save that baby's life by giving that baby a blood transfusion. Well, how do you do that? Well, this is an animation that shows the baby there on the inside. And we don't put it in the arm like you would get normally, and we don't get it there. We actually will put it right into the umbilical vein. We have learned that animations are great. When we work with our animator, he's a gifted animator, and it'll take me sometimes 3.5 hours to describe frame by frame an animation. He can then come up with an animation that lasts 60 seconds. So I can speak for 3.5 hours, or we can zip through this and you can see it in 60 seconds and walk home with the same knowledge. That is efficiency in preaching. I could go through the whole book of Romans in about 3 minutes that way, with doing an animation. But this is what's actually happening. And this has a little bit of volume, so we can put that volume, but the volume is over now. This is the baby on the inside. Baby's pale. Baby might be 18 weeks gestation. There is the blood syringe that we have gotten the donated blood from. We're using an ultrasound. We're going to guide the tip of that needle right through the skin of the mom, and we're going to guide it through the wall of the uterus, and we're going to go directly up to the umbilical vein. Their umbilical vein, there is blood that is flowing from the baby through the umbilical arteries. The arteries go to the placenta, pick up everything that they need, and then once all the things are picked up, like oxygen and nutrition, then everything goes back to the mom through the umbilical vein. And it's a continuous flow of baby's blood going to the placenta and then coming back. But it does not mix with the mom's blood. Mom's blood goes up to a membrane. So you can see the blood that's flowing. We'll guide that needle with ultrasound. You can see the tip of the needle right there in the entrance of the umbilical vein. Baby is anemic. We'll give that baby a life-saving blood transfusion from blood that you might have donated over at One Blood on 9th Avenue. Maybe you had a drive. So if we can give a baby in the womb a life-saving blood transfusion, did they meet the criteria of being a patient? Yeah. And a patient is a person no matter how small, and patients have rights. But we also have twins. Anybody here have a set of twins, or is anybody here, you're both twins? No. Yeah. You have a set of twins, were they identical? No. Oh, wow, you're just a multiple kind of family. That's great. Well, sometimes twins that are sharing a womb, the twins will actually be sharing one placenta sometimes as well. And they're just little sinners there on the inside. And sometimes selfishness kicks in. And so we're not going to spend a lot of time. But you can see just on this one illustration, one baby is a lot bigger than the other baby, because the baby on the left, even though they were conceived at the same moment in time, and by some miracle before day 13, they divided into two identical copies, the baby on the left is getting way more nutrition than the baby that is on the right. When we notice this on ultrasound, sometimes it's so dramatic that we have to intervene. So what do? We send our moms and the twins down to Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. What do? They have Dr. Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker gets consulted, and Luke Skywalker will actually take a scope. He'll go in through the skin, into the uterus, right around where the babies are. He will take his lightsaber, he'll wave it around, which is actually just a laser. He'll take that laser and he will cauterize right down the middle of that placenta. And he's saying, all right, this is your side of the placenta. This is your side of the placenta. And he has divided that one placenta into two different placentas. We'll send them down. They might be at the 95th percentile and 3rd percentile. One's real big, one's real small. They watch them for 10 days. They hop on a Delta flight, and they come back to Pensacola. We follow them for the rest of the pregnancies, and we deliver those babies. We can teach babies how to share on the inside of the womb. So if we can teach them how to share on the inside of the womb, sometimes it's tough to teach them on the outside how to share. But if we can teach them on the inside how to share, are they patients? Absolutely. And a patient is a person, no matter how small. How many of y'all remember this picture? You want to feel old? 25 years ago. 25 years ago. This was a study that was being done at Vanderbilt University for treating spina bifida, defects in the spine of a baby. And they were doing this surgery where, do you know what the technical term is for when you make an incision in that hole in the womb there? Anybody know what the technical term is for that? It's easy. It's a womb with a view. So we got a womb with a view. And right there you can see the baby, they're doing spine surgery, but the baby was like, wanted to kind of check the hand of the surgeon, make sure it wasn't like jittery and shaky and stuff. So the baby is having spina bifida corrective surgery. The baby stuck his hand on the outside. A friend of ours named Michael Clancy took the picture, and that is the patient. They did the spina bifida corrective surgery. They then tucked the hand back in. They closed the uterus, put the uterus back in under the skin of the mom, and that was at about 27 weeks gestation. About 10 weeks later, they actually delivered that baby. And so if we can do spina bifida corrective surgery on a baby in the womb, is that a patient? Yeah. And a patient is a person, and all patients have rights. It was called the Mom's Trial, actually. But that was just generation one. I was speaking up at Georgia Right to Life a few years ago, and a young kid came up there in the middle picture. And he says, Dr. Lyle, I want to get a picture with you. I said, well, what's your name? And he held out his little chest ID on it. Says, I'm Samuel Armas. He says, you use my picture all the time. And I said, well, yeah, let's get a picture. That's the little baby that stuck his hand out on the outside. And his mom was there too. And his mom says, yeah, everybody wants to meet Samuel. She goes, let me tell you, that is my uterus. Those are my tubes. That is my ovaries. But does anybody want to get a picture with Mrs. Armas? No, not at all. But that's a picture of Samuel on the left now. He's now graduated from college. He was a patient when he was 18 when that picture. He was a patient when I met him there when he was about 8 years old. And he was a patient there on the inside of his mother's womb. Yet in a lot of states, even though he is getting life-saving surgery, he could have been aborted at that same gestational age. He was a patient, and patients have rights. But that was generation one. We're now to generation three. The next video I'm going to show you is, there's not much blood, but I want you to see, because the baby you're going to see, I'm not going to show you the surgery actually, but they're actually doing the spina bifida corrective surgery with a fetoscope, with the scope that goes on the inside. But when we talk about pregnancy, pregnancy is so much more than one line versus two lines on a pregnancy test. I'm going to show you what my patient looks like on the inside, that we surgically will treat and heal on the inside. And this is laparoscopic spina bifida corrective surgery. So the surgical team, you can see the uterus right there. They have put the scope on the inside, and then it lights up just like Rudolph's nose, because there's a light going on the inside. But that's the life of the baby that we're saving. We're treating that baby as a patient on the inside. This is the baby that would easily be able to be killed in the womb just out of choice if Amendment 4 passes on November the 5th. That is a patient, and that is a person, and deserves protection. But that was generation 2. We're now in generation 3. And we can sit and talk about that. But now at UC Davis in California, Dr. Diane Farmer is now taking stem cells. What are stem cells? Stem cells are what are called totipotential cells. Well, big word, what do you do now that you're in medical school? Take a big word and break it down. Totipotential. These cells have the potential to become anything. And these are not harvested from aborted babies. They tried that, and guess what God said? It didn't work. God said, I don't think so. So they are now harvesting totipotential stem cells from placentas after somebody has given birth. They take these stem cells and they surgically put them on a little patch, and surgically they'll apply that patch to the defect on the baby's spine. And it is so amazing what the results are. All of a sudden, these totipotential cells that, like, I can become anything. It's like a 5-year-old. What's a 5-year-old going to be when they grow up? Maybe they're going to go to seminary. Maybe they're going to be a preacher. Maybe they're going to be a cop. Maybe they're going to be a doctor. Maybe they're going to be a lawyer. Maybe they're going to go into politics. Who knows? They just need a little bit of guidance and direction. When you put stem cells directly on the spina bifida defect, these stem cells, now I know what I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be normal spinal tissue. They actually call this the CURE trial, because UC Davis and Dr. Farmer and this whole team has now invested $40 million, and they really think that they have a cure for spina bifida. Babies that otherwise would not be moving their legs and would not control their bladders and bowels are now having control of their legs, because we're applying stem cell therapy to babies on the inside. That's baby Robbie, that's Dr. Farmer, and Robbie's mom, Emily. A patient is a person, no matter how small. And you think, wow, it can't get cooler than that. Oh, it's going to get cooler than that, y'all. We're now doing open heart surgery on the babies in the womb. We wanted to give you tools. This is one of the best tools to take home. I hope you remember a lot of these tools. Why is this one of my favorite tools to give you? Because I do a lot of surgery. I do a lot of hysterectomies and deliver babies. Babies are much more fun than a hysterectomy. But here's the key. When I have a woman who we're going to be performing a hysterectomy on, does she get anesthesia? Yeah. I mean, this is not bite on the wooden spoon and we're going to take your uterus out. Mom gets anesthesia. When we do fetal surgery on a baby on the inside, Does mom get anesthesia? Absolutely. But what about the baby? The baby gets its own anesthesiologist, and I'm going to show you that. When I do a hysterectomy, does the uterus get its own anesthesiologist? No, because the uterus is part of the mom. If mom is comfortable, we don't have to worry about that. The baby is a totally separate person, a totally separate patient. So the baby gets its own anesthesiologist, its own narcotics, its own paralytic, its own IV, its own anesthesia team. But this was a baby that was diagnosed with a condition called a teratoma. Can you see the teratoma up there? Make it easier. Bam. Big red magnifying glass. So you're looking at an ultrasound. You're looking at a cross section of the baby's chest, the black on the sides of the lungs. The heart is down below, all four chambers. But on ultrasound, they actually diagnosed this baby with a tumor, or as Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, a tumor. There was a tumor on the baby's heart. This tumor is called a teratoma, and this is at 26 weeks gestation. And the doctors estimated with the growth of this tumor, this baby was going to be dead in 1 to 2 weeks, unless one of two things happened. Either number one, they delivered the baby, but now you have a tiny little 27-week preemie that just had open heart surgery that's in the NICU. Well, what's the other option? They said, we think we have the technology and we have the team, that why don't we take this tumor off of the baby's heart while the baby's here on the inside, close everything up, and then we'll deliver the baby later. And that was what they opted for. So this baby has that tumor in the big red magnifying glass, the teratoma. They got a team of 36 doctors, nurses, anesthesiologists, techs, all working together to cure this baby. This is healthcare. You will hear, well, abortion is healthcare. No, abortion is not healthcare. Here you had a mom with a heartbeat and a baby with a heartbeat went into the operating room, 2 anesthesiologists, 36 people worked for hours on this case, and then a mom and a baby with a heartbeat walked out. What is abortion? Abortion is a mom with a heartbeat walks into the room, a baby with a heartbeat comes in with mom, but then to leave, you only have a mom with a heartbeat. If you are losing the heartbeats of half of your patients day after day after day, that is not healthcare. This is healthcare at the highest level. And this is the actual team that performed that surgery. I'm going to walk you through this surgery. So they had diagnosed this baby with having the teratoma there on the inside. So here's the mom's belly, and there's the baby on the inside. We're going to zoom in, and you're going to see this golf ball looking tumor that is right there on the baby's heart. So we'll zoom in a little bit and see that white tumor that's there on the top of the heart, there at the ventricle. That is the teratoma. So mom has an epidural. Mom was wide awake during this case. While she's awake, they made an incision in her belly, made an incision in her womb, and they brought out the hands. Why did they bring out the hands first? Because they had a pediatric anesthesiologist who started an IV in the baby's hand. Baby was getting fentanyl for pain. Baby was getting Norcuron to paralyze the baby. Cardiothoracic team came in, made an incision in the baby's chest, removed the tumor. As soon as they removed the tumor, the heart went, "Thank you very much," and all of a sudden the heart started beating normally. Once it was beating normally, they closed the baby's chest, removed the IV, tucked the hands on the inside, closed the mother's womb, closed the mother's skin. This is at 27 weeks gestation. They didn't deliver this baby for 10 weeks later at 37 weeks gestation. These are patients, these are persons on the inside, creating the image of God at the moment of conception, and a patient is a person, no matter how small. That is that baby's hand that had the IV, and the medicine was going from the pediatric anesthesiologist, a second anesthesiologist. That is baby Ryland right after the surgery. He had open heart surgery in the womb, and there's an update picture on baby Ryland there. He was a patient on the inside, he's a patient on the outside, and I love how his shirt matches with Dad's shirt, who's holding him in the background. Yeah, it's like, well, you're doing some cool stuff. You're giving babies blood. You're doing spine surgery. You're doing open heart surgery. But it's not like you're doing brain surgery, right? Yeah. We're now doing brain surgery and saving the lives of babies on the inside of the womb by doing brain surgery for these babies. There's a condition called a Galen malformation. It's a malformation in the brain. We can see it on ultrasound. And what's happening is you have a high pressure artery that is not distributing blood throughout the whole brain. It's made an abnormal connection with a low pressure vein. And what's happening is the veins can't take high pressure. And so these veins are just spreading and opening, and sometimes they can actually form an aneurysm and they can rupture. So what did the doctors do? They said, well, when we see this condition, half of these babies get really, really sick after they deliver. And of those babies that get sick, half of those babies die. Well, if you have 25% of your babies dying when you diagnose this condition, you want to do something about it. So this team, the neurosurgeon, said, you know what, these kids do great if we have enough time to intervene right after the baby's born, but sometimes we don't have enough time to intervene. Why don't we fix it while the baby's on the inside? They go, we can do that? And they go, yeah, we can do that. They actually repaired this defect on this baby's brain while the baby was still on the inside, this Galen malformation. So I'm going to walk you through this. They had the baby on the inside, and they had an ultrasound, which was guiding. And they guided the ultrasound, and they guided a little catheter, and the catheter went right through the skin, through the wall of the uterus, right into the baby's brain. And when they introduced this to the brain, there's a connection. High pressure artery, low pressure vein. So what did they do? They did like Trump would say, let's build a wall. They built a wall, and they built the wall right there at that abnormal connection, and they blocked that connection between the high pressure artery and the low pressure vein. And they actually were able to cure this baby. There's the catheter going there on the inside, and here's the wall that's going up. They were effective, they delivered the baby, and that's baby Denver. So if we can do brain surgery for these babies on the inside, are they patients? Yes. And a patient is a person, no matter how small, and baby Denver needs to be protected. Sanjay Gupta has heard about this, and Sanjay Gupta, he's actually a neurosurgeon. He works for the Christian News Network, CNN, and but I want you to listen to Sanjay Gupta. I've been saying for decades that these babies on the inside are my patients. Does Sanjay Gupta agree with me? We got the sound going.
Also means they had to take 2 patients to the operating room.
What did Sanjay Gupta say about these patients?
In utero surgery also means they had to take 2 patients to the operating room instead of 1.
Sanjay Gupta
and they had
agrees
to then
with me.
very
So we've been treating, and I've been calling these babies patients. The mom is a patient, the baby is a patient, and patients have rights. In fact, a patient by definition is a person receiving medical treatment, and a person, according to the 14th Amendment, nor shall any state deny any person of life, liberty, or property. Clearly, I have shown to you that these babies are patients. If they are a patient, by definition, they are a person. And by definition, according to the Constitution and the 14th Amendment, if they are a person, then they have rights. I mean, this is an MRI of that baby on the inside. That is a patient. That is a baby. It is not a blob. It is not just a collection of cells. That is a person created in the image of God. Briefly, we're going to go through the abortion pill. It used to be that 54% of the abortions were with the abortion pill. It's now up over 63%. And it blocks a hormone called progesterone. And we don't have time to go through all that, but we'll answer any questions you have. But can we reverse that? Have you ever heard of fentanyl? Fentanyl killed over 110,000 people in the United States just last year. Do we have an antidote for when somebody overdoses on fentanyl? Yes, it's called Narcan. Narcan is the antidote when somebody makes a bad decision and they take fentanyl. Well, we have the antidote when somebody takes the abortion pill and they wish they had not taken the abortion pill, and we can reverse that pill. This is one of the first successful reversals that was done here in the United States. I delivered that baby. It cost me $109 worth of medication. Is it worth $109 for the antidote? Yeah, absolutely. This is her last summer over in Mobile, Alabama, starting kindergarten. This is another baby. Mom made a bad choice. She recognized she made a bad choice. We gave mom the antidote. And it is either we're successful about 65% of the time. I've attempted reversal on 19 babies. We've been successful 15 of those times. We've trained 500 doctors on this protocol. And this past summer, we documented successful reversal number 5,000. 5,000 babies that would be dead if it wasn't for a lot of people being involved. A lot of prayer, and a little bit of medicine, and an open heart. This is one of my more recent. They named the baby William. Why? Ta-da. You know, anybody here named William or Bill? You know what William means? You were named as the bold protector. So that's what you and I, that is our role, that is our job, that is the God-given job of all men, to be a bold defender and a protector. But mom brought baby William in to see me about 2 months ago. And that's baby William right there. Well, why did mom travel all the way just to let me see baby William? Because guess what? Baby is pregnant again, and they're having a little girl, and I'll deliver that baby sometime next month. Scripture. This is how we are going to win a spiritual battle. Genesis 1:26. And God said, "Let us make man in our image." After God had made all the mountains, the rivers, the streams, the mammals, the birds, and the fish, all the rest of the universe, God said, "Let us make man in our image." At its core foundation, abortion is an attack on the image of God. We talked this morning how we've all seen people burning the American flag, burning the flag of Israel. Why? Because they hate the United States and they hate Israel. So they want to burn the image which represents the United States and represents Israel. Abortion is a spiritual battle. It is an attack against the image of God by somebody who hates God, which is why we need to treat this as the spiritual battle that it is. When it comes to conception, it's a flash of light. When it comes to Judges, we were talking this morning about Judges 3, 4, 5, and 6. God loved the nation of Israel. We know that. But God also looked at the way the children of Israel were living. And in Judges 3:7, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. What were they doing? They were offering their kids for sacrifice to Molech. They were worshiping idols, doing evil in the sight of the Lord. We have now taken the lives of over 64 million babies here in the United States that were created at birth in the image of God. If we've killed 64 million babies, that is the entire population, every man, woman, and child in California, and every man, woman, and child in Florida. We have taken those lives. Is that doing evil in the sight of the Lord? Yeah. Well, when the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, what did God do? Did God say, "Hey, y'all are on your own"? No. He delivered them into the hands of their enemies. He actually made their enemies stronger. I don't want that to happen in the United States. I don't want that to happen to my kids and my grandkids that I've never even met before. Jeremiah 1:5. God's telling Jeremiah, he says, "Jeremiah, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee to be a prophet unto the nations." God knew who Jeremiah was. God knew how Jeremiah could serve his kingdom. God knew who you were while you were in your mother's womb, and he has the opportunity for you to serve his kingdom. You just need to listen and see, how am I going to serve the kingdom of our Lord? Psalm 139. The psalmist didn't understand about cell differentiation, how two cells came together and then they changed into 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. 10 weeks into a pregnancy, there are over 1 billion cells that are there. But then the cells that are identical, all of a sudden one cell says, "I'm going to start the entire cardiovascular system, heart, arteries, veins." And another one says, "Well, I'm going to do my own thing too. I'm going to start the entire skeletal system." Another cell says, "I'm going to start the entire neurologic system." They all have the same blueprints. How do they know? Well, I'm only going to read these chapters, or I'm going to only read these chapters. That's because we serve an amazing God who is the Creator Almighty. I can tell you what's going to happen on day 18. I can tell you what's going to happen on day 19. How did the cells that are there on day 19 know what they should do the next day? We have no idea. It's called cell differentiation. But we are, as the psalmist said, fearfully and wonderfully made. Proverbs 6:16. There's 6 things that the Lord hates. Anybody want to make that list? I don't want to make that list. Things that are laid out that says, God hates these 6 things. What's the third one? Hands that shed innocent blood. If you have a picture Bible, I think the picture that should be right next to that verse is that right there, American family planning. I can't think of anything that defines hands that shed innocent blood. Talented hands, skilled hands, hands that did 4 years in college, 4 years in medical school, 4 years in residency, and were taught how to save lives. But they are using those skills and those tools to take lives. That is shedding innocent blood. How do we win a spiritual battle? Well, 18 to 24% of the men and the women in our different congregations around the country have actually been personally involved with an abortion. And I know those people are here as well. It is ubiquitous. It is across the country. Number one, we have to realize that abortion is wrong, and I know you hear that from this pulpit. But we also have to realize that that is why we have the gospel. It is the gospel that brings healing. It is the gospel that brings redemption. It is the gospel that brings forgiveness. So we need to hear that message as well. And our congregations need to know that that was part of our past. What are we told in scriptures? Forget about what lies behind and press on towards what's ahead. But when it comes to a spiritual battle, Les and I were actually speaking at the Capitol in Tallahassee. We spoke regarding the preborn and defending the lives of my patients. That night, the House voted in favor of the heartbeat bill. 2 weeks later, the Senate voted in favor of the heartbeat bill. That night, Governor Ron DeSantis signed that into law. That is our current law. But now we have some evil that is here in the United States and in Florida, and that is Amendment number 4. We had our pastors' luncheon. We had it catered by La Hacienda. It was great food. We were hoping to have 15, 20 pastors. We had 70 pastors, priests, and rabbis. That's how we multiply a message. Because just between those 70 pastors, there were over 25,000 people that they represented and they were responsible for teaching and training. But we also went to some pastors in some of the larger churches, and they said, well, we don't get involved in politics here. I was speaking with a rabbi here in town. He goes, yeah, I've heard that before. My people have heard that before. He said, Germany in 1941, the Christian churches, the Catholic churches, a lot of them said, well, we're not going to get involved in politics. Well, guess what? As a result, 6 million Jews died in the gas chambers there to the east of them. So we have a duty. We have examples of people in the scriptures. Moses involved in politics, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel, Paul, Jesus himself, were involved in politics. John the Baptist, we have a duty to make a difference. Our churches, like you mentioned this morning, pastors, we were forged in righteousness from the pulpits of our congregations. A lot of the Declaration of Independence was written and thought through in our pulpits and in our congregations. So this is a message the church must, because we are taught to be the salt and the light. And that is all of us, not just the pastors. This is all of us. We're trying to give you some tools that you can leave here with your family, your coworkers, your family and friends that you can use to defend the preborn. Because evil will not rest until they cause somebody else to fall. We thought we had won. We thought we had gone from 24 weeks to 15 weeks to 6 weeks, and we were going after the abortion pill. Evil was not satisfied. Evil did not say, well, they beat us on this one. Evil then raised $40 million, and now we have Amendment 4 that is on our ballot. And right now, it is running neck and neck on whether this is going to be part of our Constitution here in Florida. And it will be the churches that will make the difference. And it will be the churches on the panhandle that make a difference. When you watch different elections, it's like, we haven't lost yet. We've got one more hour. We've got another part of the state that's in Central Time Zone. People, they go, we do? It's like, yes, we do. And it will be the churches of the Panhandle that if we are victorious, it'll be because of the Panhandle churches. But this is who we're up against. The ACLU of Florida and Planned Parenthood of Florida. And here's the amendment. It says no law. So if this becomes an amendment, there is no law that is passed by the House or the Senate. There is no executive order passed by the governor, which will be able to supersede this constitutional amendment, where abortion would be available to anybody up until viability, which is 23 or 24 weeks. Remember, we're doing blood transfusions over at Sacred Heart to save babies' lives as early as 18 weeks gestation. We're doing open heart surgery at 27 weeks gestation. These are my patients. So viability, 23, 24 weeks. But here's a huge 2-letter word, and that is or when necessary, to protect the patient's health. We opened up with, well, what's health? Does this mean she has an ectopic or a tubal pregnancy? Well, no. There's no restrictions even currently with a heartbeat law. If a mom has a tubal pregnancy, there is no reason at all to delay or prevent her from getting the care that she needs to save her life. Health is defined as physical, emotional, psychological, familial, or age. Well, who makes that determination as far as health? That's her health care provider, which can be a doctor, it can be a nurse, it can be a Planned Parenthood nurse, and even going down to a tattoo artist is governed by the Department of Health. So there would be absolutely, Alliance Defending Freedom, one of their former presidents is one of the advisors for our ministry board. And Alan Sears said, and the writings which we have copies of for you out on the table, Alan Sears says, and ADF says, that if Amendment 4 is passed, abortion at any gestational age for any reason will be constitutionally protected here in Florida, paid for by the taxpayers here in Florida, and for states that are outside of Florida that are much more conservative, we will be paying for their abortions. We will be a destination state here in the Southeast for abortion at any gestational age. 60% is what they need to get this constitutional amendment passed. Depending on the poll, some polls have it at 58%, some polls have it at 62%. It is going to be up to us, and it is going to be up to prayer, and it's going to be us to get out and vote, because a lot of times the church does not go to the ballot box and does not vote. So can we win? Yes. We've given you tools. Hopefully we've given you scientific tools. Hopefully we've given you some medical tools. Hopefully you'll be able to say, this is about patients' rights to your family and friends. But what's the number one tool to win? Number one tool is the gospel. It is the gospel, the story of God loving us all enough that he sent his son. He lived a perfect life, but then he gave his life for us on the cross, and he was dead for 3 days. But miraculously, he conquered death and he rose again. He sits at the right hand of the Father. And if we put our trust in him because of that great love of God sending his son for us, then we can spend eternity with him, and we can be saved, and all of our friends and family can be saved. When we think about the gospel, that is the story. But what do we classically look at as far as the 4 books that we refer to as the gospel? It's Matthew, it's Mark, it's Luke, it's John. That's what we refer to as the gospel, the good news. What's the next book? Pensacola Christian. What's the next book after Luke? Acts. And it's not just Acts, it's the Acts of the apostles. When you take the power of the gospel and that message of God's love and forgiveness, and you can add to that action. And that's why we are here tonight. That's why we have men who are meeting like Micah 6:8. When you take that kind of power and you invoke action, that's when we will be successful. That's when we will save the lives of these babies in the womb. That's when we will bring healing and forgiveness to the tens of millions of men and women who have personally been involved in abortion. And that's when we will save the state of Florida, and we will save the United States, because what we are doing is evil in the sight of the Lord. God bless you all. Thank you for your time. You have a blessing having a bold pastor like you have. A pastor who will say, no, we're going to put a sign out front. We're going to have a digital sign saying vote no on Amendment 4. We need to engage in this battle. This battle can be won, but we need to engage. So get some of the pins, get some of the information. I've given you my cell number. You go into labor, you call me, all right? But we've given you my cell number. And I would really encourage your pastor, and I think he will do this, that right before we get to the election, we need to be really engaged in fervent prayer, where we are here on our knees, thanking God, because sometimes we have a thankless heart. We need to be thanking God for all the blessings that we do have in our families and for our health and for living here and being blessed to live here in the United States, to have the freedom to train young men and women to serve and share the gospel. But we need to be begging for forgiveness for what is going on here in the United States. And we need to repent, and we need to pray for God's will be done, and we need to defeat Amendment 4. But God bless you all, and thank you very much.